What's up, everybody? Good morning. We are motoring along to the next head coaching candidate for the Seattle Seahawks. This is another popular one. This is another one that gets a lot of attention, a lot of play. Ben Johnson. This is one that would get people really excited, I think, in this fan base. If this happens, if Ben Johnson comes to the Seahawks, of course, there is always the potential for things to go wrong. There is always the potential for a guy to simply not have it. Like Ben Johnson could definitely be one of those guys who's a good coordinator, good play caller, but he just doesn't have that extra it to become a head coach. Kind of like maybe what we saw from Nathaniel Hackett. That's always a possibility. I'm not discounting that. But if it does work out with a guy like Ben Johnson, you are going to see something very special this upcoming year in Seattle, I think. If he came here and was actually able to take that next step up to the head coaching level, proves that he can be a leader of men, proves that he can be a proper motivator, proves he can do all those things and comes to the Seahawks, it should be a very special offense in 2023. And because he is young, 38 years old when the season starts next year, I think he's 37 right now, we are talking about a guy who could be your coach for 25 to 30 years if he works out. So if it is Ben Johnson, if the Seahawks end up with Ben Johnson and it works, we are living on easy street. Like it was nice to have Pete Carroll there for so long in a way, having that stability at coach. If you could go from that stability you just had with Pete to the stability that you could have if a guy like Ben Johnson works out is remarkable. And to just think about what he could offer this team. Look at what he's done with Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit. Turned him into an all-pro level player. One of the best slot receivers in the league. Well, we've got JSN here. Jackson Smith. Think about how that would work. Think about how nice it would be to have the guy who helped make Amon-Ra St. Brown so good be the guy who takes JSN's game to the next level. I remember talking with the Hawks Nest about our draft picks last year, and he said that JSN reminded him the most of Amon-Ra St. Brown. He thought that was the comp. And think about what he could do with a guy like a DK Metcalf, who always seemed to be held back a little bit in our offenses. Like, there's production here that he could get that he's just not getting. Obviously, you're going to have to do some stuff with the offensive line. You're going to have to remake the tight end room. But you are also giving him Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet, a great 1-2 punch at running back. There's a lot. So if Ben Johnson comes here to Seattle, he is taking over an offense with a lot of talent. Lot of talent. You're going to, again, have to fix the interior of the offensive line. That's one thing that's going on in Detroit that's not going on in Seattle. Detroit has an elite offensive line. Seattle does not. But this would be the hire that you make if you're trying to get Geno Smith to playing at that elite level. And I do think Ben Johnson would come in here and be very excited about the possibility of working with Geno Smith for a year, because it's basically what he did with Jared Goff, right? Jared Goff was considered a throwaway player when the Lions traded for him, and he was viewed as one of those decent veterans who just wasn't really good enough to win because of, and Ben Johnson's done great work with him the last 2 years. So it would not surprise me if Ben Johnson came in here and just revamped this offense, turning it into a top 5 unit. The way we thought it was going to go in 2023, it would go in 2024. So let's talk about his resume. His resume is not that long because he is so young. The big claim to fame he has is the last 2 years in Detroit with the Lions, offensive coordinator. Obviously, last year almost making the playoffs, and this year still currently in the playoffs. 27.1 points, fifth in the league, and then the previous year 26.6, which was fifth in the league. So top 5 offense. EPA not quite so friendly, but eighth in the league this year. The previous year it was sixth. So still a lot to work with, still a lot to be excited about, still a lot to be interested in if you're looking for a head coach right now. He's done great work, and again, he's done it without a hyper elite quarterback. He's doing it with Jared Goff. If this was with somebody like Mahomes or Burrow or Josh Allen, that would be one thing. But he's doing it with somebody that the Rams basically gave up on. Sean McVay kind of gave up on him. And I know he had the opportunity to get in his mind a better quarterback, and he was trying to win the Super Bowl right then, right here, right now. But this is this is definitely a situation where the guy did work with less than elite players. He's got some elite players in Detroit, but he's working with a quarterback most people would consider to be not in the top 10, which is what he would have here for now. And he is working with, some skill position. I mean, even Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously he's a good player, but he was a fourth round pick. Not exactly a prime cut of meat here. So what he did in Detroit is pretty extraordinary. Remember, he took over an offense that was not very good. I think I think it was Anthony Lynn. It was not stand out at all, and he completely turned them around. Now, before being the offensive coordinator for the Lions, he had several different roles for the Detroit Lions. 2021, he was their passing game coordinator and tight ends coach. Their passing attack was average to below average to bad in 2021. 3,600 passing yards was 18th in the league. Their dropback EPA was negative .022, which was 24th, not very good. Yeah, they had a good tight end, though. TJ Hawkinson, 61 catches, 600 yards. I mean, you guys know how good TJ Hawkinson is. Of course, TJ Hawkinson was also a very high draft pick, so it's not like this was him making something out of nothing, but good tight end. And the previous year, 2020, he was just the tight ends coach. TJ Hawkinson had a better year, almost 70 catches, over 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. There's a decent amount of tight end coaching in his ledger, which, hey, if you want to look at it through that lens, that would also be an exciting thing for the Seahawks, right? Because we are looking at potentially flipping our tight end room around completely going into next season. I think Fant is gone. I think Parkinson is likely gone. Disley may be a salary cap casualty. You might bring brand new tight ends in here, including at least one rookie. And Ben Johnson is a guy who maybe can help bring that along because of his background with tight ends. Before tight end coach in 2020, he was the offensive quality control coach in 2019. Don't ask me what an offensive quality control coach does. It probably varies from team to team. But the offense for the Lions in 2019 was average to below average, 18th in points per game, 21.3, and it was negative a negative .039 in EPA, which was 22nd. So not particularly good. I don't know if that's really... I don't know if we can say at this point that's a reflection on him, though, right? Like, when he actually had full control of the offense, he did really well these last 2 years. So previous years, he just didn't have as much. I mean, remember, in 2021, Goff didn't even play the whole season. They played part of that season with David Blow at quarterback, I think. Like some, third string, barely hanging around in the NFL type. So hard for me to hold that against him. Before Detroit, he was in Miami, and again, he had various roles. He was a wide receiver coach for 1 year, and that was 2018. That was not a particularly good year for Miami Dolphins wide receivers. I actually looked it up. Their 3 receivers in 2018 were Danny Amendola, Kenny Stills, and Albert Wilson. None of those guys had more than 600 yards or 60 catches. There really isn't that much to say. I mean, they're obviously not great talents that he had to work with here, but the receiver core in 2018 in Miami was on the weaker side, shall we say. Okay, the 2 years before that, he was the assistant wide receiver coach, 2016, 2017. And across these 2 years, Miami actually had good receivers. They had Jarvis Landry, who had 200-plus catches over those 2 years, over 2,000 yards. Kenny Stills, who gave you about 1,700, almost 1,600 yards combined over these 2 years and 15 touchdowns. And Devontae Parker, he gave you another 1,400 yards. So they actually had 3 really prolific wide receivers at these 2 seasons, and he was the assistant wide receiver coach there, so there's something positive to be said about him. In 2015, the year before that, he was the assistant quarterback coach and the tight end coach. I know he's wearing all these different hats. It's kind of weird, right? Assistant quarterback coach, their quarterback that year was Ryan Tannehill. He had a pretty good year, 4,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 61% completion, 88.7 QB rating. It was about it was an improvement for Tannehill in some ways as a player, but obviously he didn't truly break out until he went to Tennessee, which casted some doubt about the ability of the coaching staff in Miami to get the most out of him. Your mileage may vary. And their top tight end and only prolific tight end was Jordan Cameron. He had almost 400 receiving yards that year. Not much to speak of. The 2 years before that, 2013, 2014, he was just the assistant quarterback coach. So working with Ryan Tannehill, you can kind of see that Tannehill did come along a little bit under partially his tutelage, I guess. 3,900 yards in 2013, 24 touchdowns, 17 picks, low completion percentage, improves across the board in 2014. Over 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 12 picks, completion percentage up 6 points, QB rating goes up. So he did improve marginally, I would say, from 2013 to 2015 when Ben Johnson was his assistant quarterback coach. So, yeah, there's something here. It's not exactly the stuff that dreams are made out of, but there is a little bit of a connection there if you want to make it. And in 2012, he was the offensive assistant for the Miami Dolphins. Miami's offense that year was bad, 27th in points. I think this was this was right before Adam Gase got there. This was Joe Philbin. 27th in points allowed, 24th in EPA. Pretty bad, but again, as an offensive assistant, I don't know what that means. You might just be grabbing people coffee or something. Like, that could mean so many things. And he did spend 1 year as a college coach, Boston College tight end coach in 2011. Only prolific tight end that they had was Chris Palante. And when I say prolific, I'm putting quotation marks around it. So yeah, that's Ben Johnson's resume. It's short. There are a few notable highlights here. He was an assistant wide receiver coach to a couple of really good receiver cores. He was the assistant quarterback coach when Tannehill improved as a player across his first few years in the league. Although, again, he didn't break out till he got to Tennessee. And he also was the tight end coach for TJ Hawkinson. And the big one, of course, and the one we care about the most, don't get me wrong. This is clearly the most important one because it just happened the last 2 years. He took over the Lions offense and led them from whatever to borderline elite territory. They've been elite over the last 2 years, I would say. If not elite, they've been very, very close. And he's considered a big architect of that. So, with all that being said, what do you guys think? This is the hire you make if you're trying to find the next Sean McVay, the next Kyle Shanahan. You're trying to find the next offensive wonder kid who knows the game at a level that is just so deeply embedded into him that he can just overcome pretty much anything and handle pretty much anything. And he comes in and just completely transforms the way in which our offense works. Again, this is another guy. I mean, most of the guys that we can hire have never done it before. But until he goes out there and proves it as a head coach somewhere, there will be concerns that, he's one of these types of coaches who can call a great play, can put together a great game plan. But there's a little something extra missing. That could be the case here. I'm not going to pass judgment on it yet, though. I don't think there's any way for me to tell. But, hey, he's got that Lions offense humming right now. That's really all you can say. All right, I'm going to get out of here. Go Hawks. More coaching evaluations coming up soon. But this is going to be one of the top guys for sure. People are going to be salivating all over themselves to get this guy away from Detroit. And personally, if the Seahawks came away with him, I would be very, very happy. All right, go Hawks. See you guys later.